Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. We're focused on race B this week, where it's a Group 3 race in Kyoto, and there's a very clear meta. Let's get into it. The anti-meta car of the week is once again the GTR. The M6 is absolutely dominant, and I think frequently when the M6 is dominant, the GTR also works really well. I was able to get a 132.4 with the Nismo GTR, and there are a few people, including someone in 12th place, that have been using the GTR, but as you can see, it's absolutely dominated by the M6. The Merc and Lexus also seem to work here, but one of the big issues that a lot of the MR cars have is stability through the chicane. Starting on the right side of the track, I want you to aim so you hit the curb like this, but avoid the grass, and right at the 50-meter board, we're going to start turning in. You're not going to touch the brakes until you're flat on the track itself and off the curb. Trail brake into the corner, downshifting to third approximately when you get to the blue section, and then stay close to the inside. You want to be off the brakes, turning in, and then back on the throttle before you get to these three white signs on the outside. You'll know that you really nailed it when you can turn in, get on the throttle, and get all the way up onto the curb just barely as you then track out to the exit, staying full throttle, of course. You don't want to get on the throttle and then off, because that will rob you of all your momentum going up this hill. This next section, you don't need to lift whatsoever. You've got to make sure that you hit these curbs and go all the way up on them without touching the grass, and you also have to hit them late enough that you're not going to just bounce off of them. You want to come off of them before you get to the end. You don't want to touch the grass, and on this final one, you definitely don't want to hit it early. If you hit the front of it, it's going to make you bounce in the air and probably hit that wall on the outside. The next corner is similar to T1, but it opens up a little bit more. You're going to go almost all the way up on this curb and turn in before the 50-meter board that you're seeing right there. You're going to wait until you come all the way off the blue portion of the track before adding brakes. And again, you just want to trail brake in, scrubbing speed steadily as you get yourself closer and closer to the inside. Dipping to third just briefly and then back up to fourth will help your car rotate, and then you can get back on the throttle before this post that you see here on the inside. Just like with T1, as you gently come off the brakes, you add more steering before then getting back on the throttle, and you should come just barely up on this curb. You can note the tire marks that are on it and the tire marks that are going all the way as you track out, and of course, avoid the grass at all costs. As you approach the next corner, you're going to angle yourself so you miss the grass but go all the way up on the curb as you brake, and you're going to hit the brakes about 15 meters before the 100-meter board on the right. Your goal here is to brake hard down to third and then trail brake in really quickly directly at the 50-meter board. I've found that if I miss the grass in this first one, just barely glancing off of it, I can then floor it in third gear and then plan on actually going 2 tires in the grass on both the next corners. You can also do a little bit of grass on the first corner, and then you could miss it on the exit, and you might actually be able to carry a little bit more speed or get on the throttle earlier. All you need to really know is that you want to go as straight as you possibly can through there. Try not to turn too much as you go over the curbs, and if you take a little bit of grass, it really isn't the end of the world. If you come off at a weird angle on this hill like I did here, it's really not going to be that bad as long as you kept up your momentum, and for this right-hander up here, you don't have to go wide, you can just hug it. You're not going to lose a lot of speed by turning in tightly. Once again, we're going to approach the curb so we go all the way up on it but avoid the grass, and at the very end of the yellow lettering on the left is when you're going to hit the brakes. Brake hard down to third, and you can see this little line right here that can indicate when you want to turn in. You're going to continue bleeding off speed, heavily braking, downshifting all the way to first to get the car to rotate, turn in a little bit, get up to second gear, and then gently back on the throttle. This car's pretty good with the grip. If you're really crazy on the throttle, you're going to slide, but as long as you get the grip up before getting fully on the throttle, you should be good to go. From here, I want you to move all the way to the left side of the track, and we're going to keep our eye on the right side. What we want to do is start turning in and then lift off the throttle before you get to the point where you're going to start to brake. If you brake heavily while you're still turning to the right, you're going to make the car actually oversteer to the right. So what you want to do is either neutralize the steering or just brake really gently before then heavily braking as you steer straight, and then lift off and trail brake and turn to the left. I'll let you see it right here. You can see I'm gently braking as the car continues to turn to the right, but then I heavily brake in a straight line before then trail braking off again, trying to eat up as much of that curve as I can, and then back on the throttle, gently of course, to stabilize it and make sure you don't oversteer or understeer off the track. For the final time, we're going to drive all the way up on the curb, and we're going to look for the 50-meter board here on the left. Right at that line, we're going to turn in, and then you're going to hit the brakes as you get on the flat part of the track. About when you get to the inside curb, you're going to downshift to second and then try to bleed off as much speed so you can apex late, get back up to third gear, and then fully on the throttle. For the finish, you want to make sure that you just stay all the way to the left because moving to the right to set up for the next lap will take a little bit extra time. On these long sweeping corners, you can either do a double apex or a late apex or even a long apex where you just kind of stick to the inside, kind of like what I'm doing right here. But when it comes to like a late apex, you don't really want to go really exaggerated, really deep, and then slide out beyond or really far away from the inside of the corner. If you're going to do a late apex, you actually do want to stick really close to the inside and then hit that apex really tightly at the very end. I would suggest making sure you just don't go too far away from that nice little blue and white line that you see there. Even if you're going for a really late apex, it's more important to stay close because you're just going to drive a lot greater distance if you go really far from the inside of the corner. This chicane can really make or break your lap. It's more important to get yourself slowed down and then fully on the throttle really early, trying to monster truck over the curbs, than it is to try to carry a lot of speed through there. You do, of course, want to do both, but if you have to choose just one because you can't quite figure out the rhythm, it's much better to slow yourself down early and then just floor it all the way through. The car's really stable, you should be able to do it. On that really tight hairpin, the car can get loose. It's probably the loosest corner for this car, but just be really patient on the throttle and make sure you don't do anything too quickly. If you take too much curb or not enough curb, you can also bounce on that last left-hander. I think that as long as you don't just catch your inside tire, like on the inside lip, then you'll be totally fine. This car is really, really stable. And again, for this final section, you don't want to go all the way to the right to set up for your lap if you know you've got a good lap. It can cost you like a couple hundredths. Since this is a race B instead of a race C, we don't really have to worry too much about an actual strategy. You do, of course, have to worry about passing and defending and that kind of stuff, but that's just your basic racecraft. That's not actually anything contributing to the real strategy. So I'm going to show you this really, really chaotic race from the back. It was, I believe, top split in EMEA just extremely early in the morning, so there weren't a lot of people racing. And just like any other time you're racing from the back in race B, because it's a really short race, only 5 laps, people are absolutely desperate. And on top of that, people are just kind of driving crazy. There was at least one time during this race that I considered quitting it and then trying another one or just racing from the front and showing what this car can do against the M6. But I decided to stick with it because if I could pull off some kind of comeback, it would be really good as evidence for this car being the anti-meta car. Now, starting off, you may or may not have a little bit more momentum than the car in front of you, and if you do, then of course you can try to pull off a pass, but of course it's very important not to do anything too crazy. So while I did position myself to make a pass, he was just going to go ahead and take his line, which is his prerogative, so I slowed down as to not hit him, and it actually almost caused me to completely spin out. You got to be really careful on these curbs. If you catch a tire like on the inside lip, it can just pull you around and make you spin. Now, this guy, I guess we can call that a rejoin. He had a bit of a messy rejoin. Well, it seemed like he was going to give me space. He ended up not giving me space. And even though it's difficult, he could have just chosen not to hit the throttle, and instead he stayed on it. So I am calling that his fault. It also almost took out the other guy, Skelko, so I think we both ended up really lucky. We kind of paid for his mistake, which is of course not fair, but that's just how racing goes. I was really lucky that I didn't take any damage from that, however, because I was able to then just stick with them and try to put on the pressure and try to make another move happen. I should have actually included a highlight from when I tried to do another car as the anti-meta car just a few races before that, where I was absolutely taken out at the chicane. And so I was very, very wary of all the driving, especially with what that Mercedes did. So I wasn't even paying attention to the fact that I didn't position myself for that corner, but luckily I didn't even need to because these guys were going so slow that it didn't really matter. And speaking of, I had to check up so much that all of my momentum disappeared. Now, I wasn't sure if this guy was just going incredibly slow or if he was trying to not hit the people in front. But as I went for an inside pass, he decided to brake and just continue steering in front of me, so I realized that I'm going to have to make a very clear pass happen, or it really wasn't going to happen at all. When people are willing to just brake and turn in front of you and kind of change their line, then they're willing to let you hit them on an inside pass. So what you've got to do is get all the way next to them before making a pass, or at least that's the big goal. Now, there's a big difference between kind of being dirty and then trying to pull in front of someone while braking, and also just, braking and taking your normal line. Now, I wasn't exactly next to that guy. However, as I hit the brakes, if he had taken a normal line and I'd taken my normal line, I would have braked a lot later and I would have been all the way next to that guy. But, so anyways, I digress. I did not trust this guy to do the right thing, so I was going to be very, very aggressive. Now going to this corner, I was going to position myself in a way that I could late brake just a little bit, but I ended up just braking in a normal way because I thought we were 3 wide. He braked a little bit too late, hitting that red BMW, and then I got really lucky, and unfortunately the red BMW paid the price that time. I was very happy that I found myself just 2 car positions behind that yellow Mercedes. Now, it might have been just a complete mistake on his part. He might have tried to give me space, but not realized how much he'd have to lift off the throttle. In reality, I think that he didn't really care, and he was just going to take his line no matter what. But either way, I wasn't planning on driving him dirty, but I did want to pass him. I absolutely wanted to beat that guy. Jumping forward to the next T1, they did a really good job getting away from me on the final corner of the last lap, so I assumed that they were going to have the same pace going into T1, and unfortunately the Mercedes was so slow that the GTR ran into him, and that made us all really bunched up here. It makes it really difficult to see exactly where you're going or know when people are going to slow down, and Skelko unfortunately hit that curb really weird. That bounced him out to the wall. That's why you've got to avoid the front side of that curb. Now, as you probably can guess, I wasn't very happy with this Mercedes driver, so I went for a really obnoxious dive, and I almost pulled it off. I was pretty surprised that he gave me the space, but either way, he defended really well that time. Now, going into the chicanes, it's a good idea just, even by yourself, to get yourself set up so that you can floor it coming out of it. But when I got on the throttle, I realized that he was kind of off the line and saw that he was going to go wide and progressively wider each time, which meant that I could set myself up for a really good pass on the exit, and it worked really well. Now going into this corner, I had the advantage because I was in the inside, and he really didn't stand a chance anyways. Now he might have been making an accident when he pushed me off the track, but either way, I'm still snarky about it. Now I could also see that those guys were going to crash into each other, so as you can see, I slowed down a lot more and then angled myself so I can get on the throttle really heavily, but at kind of a narrow line, and it really helped out because those guys did take each other out just like I thought, and now I was able to follow this GTR right here. Since he didn't have any slipstream and I had a very good exit, I was able to get all the way up next to him, and he didn't even try to defend. Now, it is important when you're passing people with slipstream that you brake a little bit earlier because you're going to be both at a narrower angle and you're going to be going faster, but the same rules apply. You want to try to take the same line as you can, or at least try to get back on the line after you take a compromised line into a corner. But as you can see, the GTR can handle pretty much anything. This is definitely one of the reasons why this is my anti-meta car. Jumping to the end of the lap, this guy had a big penalty and I had a really good angle. Since they were going really slow, I was planning on just zooming right by them, and unfortunately he had a moment which killed his momentum, and that damaged my car, unfortunately, on top of killing my momentum. Had I not hit him, I fully believe I'd be able to pass both of those M6s going into T1, but unfortunately I lost all my momentum and took damage, so I didn't get another chance until the final corner of the final lap. I positioned myself so I can get another really good slingshot exit, and it worked a lot better this time. It didn't look like I was going to pull anything off, but once again, the M6 had a moment of the exit, and instead of completely killing my momentum, it killed his, and I had a little bit of slipstream, and I was just barely able to get in front of him. Less than 0.02 of a second, but in the end, after having some absolute disasters, I ended up being the fastest non-meta, 5th place overall after starting way towards the back, and I think that proves that the GTR is definitely a good anti-meta car this week. As always, thank you very much for watching my video. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, I'll be making another guide next week. To end, I'm going to leave you with a look at my current members. I love every one of you. Thank you very much.